Welcome to Land of the Bible. I'm your host, David Sussman. This week, we will visit the ancient biblical city of Shiloh. Deep in the mountainous region of Samaria, in the biblical heartland of Israel, lies one of the most sacred and significant sites in Jewish history, Shiloh. For 369 years, this was the resting place of the Mishkan, the Tabernacle, the very dwelling place of God's presence before the Holy Temple stood in Jerusalem. This was the seat of Eli, the high priest, the very place where Hannah poured out her heart in prayer, asking for a child, and it was here that her son, the great prophet Samuel, grew up and first heard the voice of God. But Shiloh's story is not just history, it is a continuation of biblical prophecy. Among its ruins, a new chapter is unfolding. The Bible tells us that the ashes of the red heifer are needed for purification, and here in Shiloh, these special cattle are being raised, carrying forward an ancient prophecy into the modern world. I'm David Sussman, and on this episode of Land of the Bible, we'll step into the past, explore the sacred significance of Shiloh, and uncover the mysteries of the red heifer. So join me on this extraordinary journey through faith, history, and prophecy.
My name is Eliana Passantine. I'm originally from San Francisco, from the Bay Area. We live in the town of Eli, named for Eli, the high priest. I live right up there. Can you see there's a water tower and two homes? Our home is the one on the right. That's the direction of Tel Aviv. This is the direction of Mount Gerizim and Mount Ebal. From my house, almost 3,000 feet above sea level, we can see all of Israel. In the morning, I wake up and I see Jordan, and in the afternoon, at sunset, I can see the coast of Tel Aviv, the Mediterranean. So we felt an importance to live on these hilltops, to live in Eli, and to establish it and to develop it on the Israeli state land. Ancient Shilo is literally just beneath my home, so I started giving tours here, and it became my expertise because I had to be back in time to pick up my kids at 1:15. The groups that came had an hour and a half, and that's how I started giving tours here and becoming professional and giving the tour of Shiloh to dignitaries from all over the world. When a person chooses to visit Israel with their family, with a group, for whatever reason they want, it's always good to start from the beginning. The children of Israel are wandering through the desert with Moses leading them, carrying the tabernacle on their backs. And after 40 years of walking through the wilderness with Moses, Moses is not allowed into Israel, and Joshua crosses with the children of Israel, crosses the Jordan River into Israel, places the tabernacle in Gilgal, which is not far from Jericho. 7 years of conquering, 7 years of settling, and after those 14 years, God tells Joshua to come to Shiloh. I'm using the Hebrew pronunciation versus Shiloh, so every time I refer to Shiloh, it will be Shiloh. Joshua establishes the first capital city, and what I like to say, the first state of Israel. So we have the first capital before Jerusalem. Everyone knows how ancient Jerusalem is, but we're going back 3,500 years to the time that this was Israel's capital city. So what do we want to see here? First of all, we have the map. What's special about Shiloh is it symbolizes unification. In Hebrew we say achdut. Everyone comes back to the core, to Shiloh. So there's Judea and there's Samaria. And within Samaria there's Binyamin, that's the regional council, and the tribal inheritance is Binyamin, Ephraim, Menashe. That's all part of Shomron, Samaria, Judea. This is the Jordan River. So this would be a West Bank. This is not a West Bank. That's why we call it Judea and Samaria. This is the East Bank, and this is the West Bank. This is a bank of a river. So we need to start coming back to our roots and giving our land its biblical and historical name, Judea and Samaria. From 1922, when this wasn't even the state of Israel, this was the British mandate was here, they already had a dream to uncover ancient Shiloh. And the first delegation came here to Shiloh in 1922 from Denmark, and they started excavating. They were Christians looking for Hannah, looking for Shiloh, looking for the Tabernacle, looking to understand and to feel where Samuel the prophet grew up. And what they uncovered was, for example, we're right here in this Byzantine church. Byzantine period is 324 to 638 CE, and they uncover a basilica. They uncover these are the pillars, and we have the Corinthian capitals, and everything here on the floor, the mosaics, everything here is original. The only thing that they built and reconstructed was this structure in the 1920s, and it's a basilica, so people could walk in and get the feeling what it was like being in a church from so many thousands of years ago. But what their excavation did is they uncovered about 6 churches from the Byzantine period, and this pointed archaeologists later on in the direction of the Tel, of the artificial mountain of where ancient Shiloh really is, the nucleus, the beginning, where it all began. And not until later in the 70s, when Bar-Ilan University, Israel Finkelstein, the archaeologists come here and start digging with the Israelis that move and live here and establish modern Shiloh, we find more, uncover more, and understand that this is probably Shiloh. Every year, archaeologists come from Israel and from abroad and uncover our history. And we find more and more pottery shards, mosaic floors, collar-rimmed jugs from the time of Joshua, water cisterns, and there's always more and more proof that this is actually Shiloh. One of the incredible discoveries is from a different Byzantine church, even a little bit more ancient, is an inscription that says, "Have peace on the inhabitants of Shiloh," and it says Shiloh, Siloin. And it says on the second row, there's the letter N, and then there's a C, I, the upside down V is an L, O-Y-N, Siloin. It's right there in the middle. That's the inscription. And these floors here are thousands of years old. And everywhere we look, there's an ancient find. And in ancient times, we had that N. You're from Shiloh, you're a Shilonian. So that Siloin is very important to us. Because when an archaeologist comes to an ancient site, a biblical site, they have a dream to find 3 things. An inscription. I always say it doesn't have to say Hannah was here, but something, some kind of inscription, and we've uncovered it, we found it. Some kind of reference in the Bible, which we have, and the Arabs here in the region, they keep the ancient Hebrew names. For some reason, they have villages with ancient Hebrew and biblical names. So a village here in the 18th and 19th century was called Sailun, Siloin, Sailun, and so that preserves the ancient biblical name.
Imagine walking where Jesus walked, where faith comes to life. Feel the Bible story unfold around you, from the green Galilee to Jerusalem's ancient streets. experience the serene and welcoming land of the Bible, where miracles happen. Put your heart where His footsteps are. Visit Israel.
Walking through the site, everywhere we look, there's something ancient from many different periods of time. This is an ancient olive press. You can see that the puddle there kind of looks like olive oil. It's pretty cool. This is a home from the Roman period. But we're really here to focus on the time of the Tabernacle, the time of Joshua, and the time that Hannah prayed here. When you walk through the site, there are piles of pottery shards, and there's one pile that you can actually take some home with you. This is my treasure pile. These are pieces of pottery from different periods of time. This is a handle, for example, from about 2,000 years ago. And look, this is the bottom of some kind of a pot. And the archaeologists, whenever they excavate, there's always a lot of pottery. And after they go through the piles of pottery, the excess pieces are left here for groups to come and to feel and to connect. This is an educational site. We want people to feel the past, to feel the history. You can come here and you can take 1 or 2 pieces home with you. This is all thousands of years old. It's a real treasure. If you come to Shiloh, we'll let you have some of it. Now in the Talmud, there's a whole explanation about the fact that when the Jews would come on pilgrimage 3 times a year, let's say Passover, they're standing in line waiting to offer their sacrifice. You have to offer your sacrifice in Shiloh, but you can eat your sacrifice, the meal with the meat, with your family, b'chol haro'eh, as far as the eye can see. Now, I always tell people that come up to our home that this is where they invented the disposable dishes. Because as soon as pottery, according to Jewish law, is porous, it absorbs, in this case, the holiness, therefore cannot be reused. So as soon as they finish eating, the families would sit literally in my backyard, eat their holy sacrifice. They would break the dishes because the dishes are holy now and that it cannot be reused. So we have broken dishes from Jewish families from 3,300, 400, 500 years ago, all over our backyard. And it's not just in our backyard, it's all the mountains surrounding Shiloh. Wherever you can see Shiloh, that's where people would sit with their families and have their feast and then break those dishes. But to understand the story and to feel the story, you really have to be here, because when you walk through these paths, you can feel like you're walking through the biblical verses. There's always a dream to find 3 things in a biblical site, and one is a reference in the Bible. This is Judges chapter 21, verse 19. "Vayomru hineh chag Hashem b'Shilo miyamim yamima," and there was the festival of the Lord from year to year in Shiloh, "asher mitzvona leBeit El," which is north of Bethel, "Mizracha hashemesh lamesila ha'ola miBeit El Shchema, u'minegev leLevona," east of the highway that goes from Bethel to Shechem, and on the south of Livona. They're talking about a highway during the time of the Judges, because this same highway that we drive on today, Highway 60, also known as the Highway of the Patriarchs, was a main artery of life during the time of the Judges. I always say this is ways of ancient times. It tells you how to get to Shiloh. And it really, we know where Beit El, the ancient Beit El is. Bethel, the story of Jacob's ladder. We know where Livona is. The Arabs have a village called Luban, and they have another village called Beitin. We know how to find our way, and because of the archaeologists and the finds, we know where Shiloh is. And we can find that way. But what's really interesting is the highway. Open up the book of Genesis and follow the path of Abraham, walking back and forth from up north, from Afula, all the way down to Beersheba. Jacob, walking back and forth, and they're parking, and their camels, and their donkeys. Joseph, after he receives the coat of many colors and he goes to look for his brothers, he's sent by his father, and finally he finds them, taking the same highway, the same ancient route. And we know the story of how they throw him in the pit, but we also know the end of the story. And that's what you feel when you come to Shiloh. There's a beginning, there's a middle, there's an end, and there's a continuation. When you walk around, you have to be careful. There are ropes everywhere because there are so many water cisterns, ancient water cisterns. Now, why would we need water cisterns? If this is a capital city where 3 times a year there's pilgrimage, people are going to be hungry and thirsty and they're going to want water. So you can tell that this was a big location. This was a big capital city. The jugs that you can see in the museum, the collar rim jugs, this is just one example, but we found about 70 of those here. And that was for olive oil and grape juice. Now, why would one need grape juice, for example? If you have families walking for days and days and days, that's the ancient Coca-Cola. That's the Gatorade. That's gonna give you some sugar in your blood after walking for so long. And there's wheat, and we found organic substance. We found charred raisins that were burnt in a fire, and we can date that fire to the destruction of Shiloh. It's amazing, it's incredible. So these finds, first of all, they're different finds from different periods of time. Some are Roman and some are Muslim, but it's layers and layers. And I can tell you that we've only uncovered about 5% of this whole tell. So every year when the archaeologists come, they're going to uncover more and more. For example, part of the wall has been uncovered, the wall from the time of Joshua. That's interesting. But we're just uncovering piece by piece by piece, and it's like a puzzle. So we don't have a full picture yet. We know we're in Shiloh, we have different finds, but there's really a lot to feel. So when you come to Shiloh, there's something it's hard to explain. There's a feeling. There's a feeling of power. There's a feeling of meaning. You can feel the prayer of thousands of years. You can feel the biblical story. It's something you really want to experience, but you have to come here to sit down on one of these stones, to look at the beautiful view, to be alone with your thoughts and your feelings. It's something that I think is unique to this site because this is where prayer began. This is where the children of Israel came, one of their first stops in Israel, and established something. These are our roots. This is our history. This is the land of the Bible.
I will bless those who bless you, God promised Abraham. Embrace this covenant by connecting with the people of Israel. From Jerusalem's stones to Galilee's shores, experience living faith through their traditions and hospitality. Your journey is more than visiting biblical sites. It's about hearts that welcome your friendship. Your presence matters. Discover Israel.
The hologram, what's amazing about this hologram, and I love it, within 6 minutes, you fully understand what the tabernacle is. The size, the meaning, what was inside, why was there a copper sink, what was it used for? In 6 minutes, on a very high level, in so many languages. We have in Chinese and Korean and German and any imaginable language. We really, really urge you to come and watch this. This is the beginning of the tour. It's a must before you continue on your tour. In the museum, you can see the finds and feel the life here. What I love about this museum is it says that you're invited to touch Shiloh's past. Usually when you're in a museum, everything's behind glass. It says, please do not touch. So here you're allowed to touch. You can touch the history, you can feel the history. It's part of us. So every window in this museum is a different period of time. We have the Canaanite period and then the Iron Age. The Iron Age is the period of the Judges, the period of Joshua ben Nun, up until the First Temple period. So this would be the main period of the story of Shiloh. These are these jugs, these humongous jugs that were uncovered that I was telling you about. And it's really the collar rim jug, typical from the time of Joshua. We uncovered over 70 here in this site. And this is an interactive site. with computers and stories for kids, for adults who want to hear and learn more. It's digitized because we know that this new generation is a digital generation, and we want to connect them to the history and to the past. There are coins, there are stone vessels. The stone vessels prove that this was a Jewish city because of the pure and impure and the pottery. And according to Jewish laws, we would need stone vessels in the kitchen. There are many different beautiful artifacts here, but this is not the original. The original is the Good Samaritan Museum, but the inscription that says, "Have peace on the inhabitants of Shiloh." If we look at the second row, there's an N, C, I, upside down V is an L, O, Y, N. Silo, Siloin. This is Shiloh. This is exciting. This was uncovered in 2006, and from that day we know for a fact, everyone agrees that this is the ancient site of Shiloh. And ancient archaeological sites, there are always different ideas. Is this really the site? Is King David really buried where he's buried? Is that really David's city? Is this really the Western Wall? This is definitely Shiloh, and it's exciting, and it's magnificent and amazing. So we go all the way through the Muslim period, Ottoman Empire, to the British rule and today. And if we remember, the modern excavations began here by the Danish excavation here. There's a letter from Denmark, and the head of the excavation came here in 1922. And so here we have we've closed the circle of the story of Shiloh, of the archaeology, of the history. And now we've returned home to understand this story and to feel this story and to learn about this story.
Imagine walking where Jesus walked, where faith comes to life. Feel the Bible story unfold around you, from the green Galilee to Jerusalem's ancient streets. Experience the serene and welcoming land of the Bible, where miracles happen. Put your heart where His footsteps are. Visit Israel.
This is the birthplace of prayer. Anywhere you go, any church, mosque, synagogue in the world, the prayer that we hold a book and we speak and we read and we speak to God, it all began here. A woman stood here and made a revolution. A woman named Hannah, who according to Jewish commentaries, came for 19 years to pray. 19 years she prayed for a son. She prayed for a child. And we learn Eli the high priest, Eli HaKohen, sees her moving her lips and no sound comes out and thinks she's drunk. What is that story? You've never seen a person pray? No, because there was no prayer before that. There were priests and the high priest, and there were sacrifices, and a person would come from afar with their family and offer a sacrifice to say thank you, to say I'm sorry, to whatever reason. And the priest, the Kohen, spoke to God. We, the people, did not speak to God. We did not have a connection to God. We didn't think of speaking to God. We knew there was a priest and we offered our sacrifice. Hannah stands there and prays, and she changes the world. Her prayer is so intense and so strong, and she teaches us something that we rely on today, that gives us comfort today, that gives us strength today. And that happened here. And when you stand where we believe that the tabernacle stood for 369 years, you can feel it. You pass that threshold and stand in that big open space and recite Hannah's prayer. Believe me, I've been here 3,000 times at least, and I feel it every time. I feel it every time. You can feel the presence of God. The biggest and newest attraction here is to see the Red Hefers.
I'm Larry Borntrigger from northern Indiana. I'm what the Jewish people would consider righteous from the nation, B'nai Noach. I live by the Sheva Mitzvot, B'nai Noach. 6 years ago, I think it was, the Temple Institute was looking for a red heifer in Israel. They couldn't find any. So the farmers that were for 30 years thinking that maybe Israel might need one, they said we might have some. So some of the rabbis went over and looked at them. Sure enough, these 5 qualified. The interesting thing about that, first of all, is that usually they'd have tags in their ears, which would disqualify them. But because of COVID, to say, the person who usually would do that didn't come out to the farm to tag them. So it's just one of those little things that, to me, Hashem, God, had his hand in it to make sure that they were available. There's 5 red heifers. 2 don't qualify because the one had too many different colored hairs. The other one had sort of like growth on the side of her neck, which would be considered not kosher. So about every month or so, somebody from the Temple Institute comes out. They have a magnifying glass and a flashlight and go over the ones that still qualify. So far, 3 of them still qualify. To me, the red heifer used to be an idea. Now it's a reality, and it's going to reveal a lot of things that either God, Hashem, has hidden through history, or that different religions have hidden through history. The red heifers are the catalyst that is changing all that to a correct understanding of what God is doing.
In the heart of the Judean desert, where the mountains meet the shores of the Dead Sea, stands one of the most legendary strongholds in history, Masada. Thank you for joining us, and make sure to join us next time as we connect you to the people, places, and land of the Bible.